wheel. An error occurred. Oh, you're kidding me. Oh, hey, we are live. Welcome. I see Michelle. You're attending right there. I'm here with my friends Hamed and Dr. Ethan Lin. Oh, hey, we are live. Welcome. I see Michelle. You're attending right there. Oh, Hamed and Dr. Ethan Lin. Oh, hey, we are live. Welcome. I see Michelle. You're attending right there. Oh, are you guys hearing a feedback loop too? Oh, hey, we are live. Hamed, do you have headphones, or can you mute out maybe? Let's see if that takes care of it. Hello, Michelle, if you can hear me and have access to the chat. This is our first pre-conference webinar, and Michelle, you get to be our audience guinea pig. If you can chat with us, I'm curious if that function works just in general, but also want to make sure that everybody can hear us. So I'll give you a second there, Michelle, to make sure that you're hearing and seeing. Actually, and I'll see if I can even get there, Michelle, to make sure that. Can you see this chat? I might need a note card and paper handy too. I can do some key cards here.
Oh, Michelle says, I can hear you, but I do not have a good connection.
Okay. Hopefully it settles down. Let's see here. It's a private chat. Let's see what this is about. Okay. All right. Well, Michelle, hopefully you can catch up. If not, this is being recorded and will be available on YouTube at that same link. So you're able to come back to it. Not to mention, I know that Hamed and I are going to be getting back on the on StreamYard again next week. But it's 1:03. We're going to get started with this, and I want to hear what Reading Horizons has to offer to Indiana educators. But Michelle, welcome. My friends at Reading Horizons, thank you guys so much for being a part of this event and for sponsoring it. Why don't we do some quick introductions?
Eric, thank you so much for having us. My name is Hamed. I'm with Reading Horizon for a little bit over 7 months. So I cover all the schools in Indiana. So we have about 70 school districts currently using our program, and we're going to be out there again next week. I'll have Ethan, Dr. Ethan Lin, introduce himself, and we're going to get into it. We're going to be covering our program for K-3 students today.
Fantastic. And Dr. Lin.
Well, hello. I'm Dr. Ethan Lin. I'm what's called an education specialist with Reading Horizons. So I cover all things education, presentations, webinars, seminars, trainings, you name it. I do that. I live in Illinois, the Prairie State, a little to the west, and I help cover educational needs for Reading Horizons in the Midwest. So ranging all the way from Ohio to Missouri. So yeah, my background is post-secondary ESL instruction. So fancy way is university intensive English programs. Was the curriculum coordinator and went on to be a teacher, and researcher and all of that, all focused on literacy. So I absolutely love literacy, and my background is in linguistics, and I love all things literacy, patterns of the English language. It's my wheelhouse. So I'm happy and excited to be here.
As a former English teacher, I'm happy to have you here too. So very excited to hear what Reading Horizons has to offer. So when we think about literacy these days, I feel as though the topic writ large has, and other content areas as well, to be fair, have acquired a handful of new attributes, needs, growing edges, as it were, as a result of what's transpired these last couple of years, but not necessarily specific to it, if that makes sense. Are you seeing, Dr. Lin, that in your experience that there has been sort of a rapid retooling of what literacy coaches and thus teachers of English, whether they're an elementary school or a secondary dedicated ESL or English language arts instructor, have there been a number of changes that you've been paying attention to from your vantage point at Reading Horizons?
Yeah, I have definitely noticed in the past, the short past here, there's been a great call or demand for the science of reading, structured literacy or research-based practices. There's been a big push for that. However, when I often meet with educators, they know they want it, they know they need it, and it's being called for, but oftentimes they don't know what it is, and then oftentimes don't know what to do with it. And so that's been my role here, is I've been helping educators understand, well, what is the science of reading? And I think most importantly is how to apply that to the classroom. I had an opportunity to go into, into a university, potentially be a professor or pursue this route. I chose this route because the application was so appealed to me, and I felt like I could make such a bigger difference being on the ground with teachers and educators.
Not to put either of you on the spot, but before we get into taking a look at what Reading Horizons has to offer, can I ask for a little bit of background on Reading Horizons, and like what was it that sort of inspired the founders to launch yet another curriculum company, yet another technology company into the space?
Yeah, would you like me to take that, Hamed?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, so our program formally began in 1984. It was called Discover Intensive Phonics for Yourself by an educator named Charlotte Lockhart. She was an educator in Decatur, Illinois, so central Illinois, kind of my neck of the woods. She was Orton Gillingham trained, had all the training and the materials there, and she took her Orton Gillingham training, and over the course of several years, experimented a little things, tried a little bit here, and actually created a roadmap or a curriculum based on what she saw with her students. And that's how Reading Horizons was born. We were actually a software company in the 80s. So you listen to cassette tapes as you would watch on the computer, and it had to be synchronized. And from there, we built out to, a curriculum with manuals and materials in the classroom. And just recently, in the past year or two, we've really exploded nationwide. We cover the entire nation now. We're actually going on to international markets, but it all began in a small schoolhouse in Decatur, Illinois, in the 70s and 80s.
Fantastic. And it's not hard for me catching up to the latest season of Stranger Things, and me being an 80s child, the idea of having just a Reading Horizons mixtape in the present, or a playlist, if it were, for a student to see themselves in the content, to be able to acquire literacy skills by being entertained, by enjoying high interest based material and so forth. I think that sounds like a pretty good foundation for Reading Horizons to have been around for so many decades already and staying with the times. What's it looking like to bridge that learning science-based, research-based background in best practice? What's that look like in the present? At the beginning, when I asked you about some of those changes that are happening, what's the user experience like today for Reading Horizons?
Yeah, I would say the big push is now the blended learning approach. So it's integrating the online component with the in-person direct instruction. There's a lot of programs out there. They've got that. It can be kind of clunky, and they might it might work, but they might not work well in unison. And we've recognized that, and we're actually putting our programs together, making them synchronizing them to make that a seamless experience. And then along with that, we realized the call for building that automaticity. You could teach a student explicit instruction and they could learn all the rules all day long, but we're really focusing on developing that automaticity. So we are developing a lot of fluency, a lot of decodable readers. And then we're also realized that phonological awareness, phonemic awareness in particular, is a big, it's very popular right now. It's very, very important. And so we've just released a brand new phonemic awareness piece that goes hand in hand with our decoding and phonics instruction. So it's exciting. You've got the direct instruction coming together. You're adding decodable readers, and you're adding a phonemic awareness piece, kind of bringing it all together. So yeah.
Well, you're saying it is exciting, and you're saying the right things for educators who take their practice seriously, and continue to look for ways to bolster what they're doing. And good and well that we jump as educators, as classroom teachers, we jump constantly back and forth between the theoretical and the applied. The idea of taking things that we've read about and the research conducted behind them, and then saying, hey, I have this one student and I'm struggling to get them to acquire certain skills, or to feel fluent, to be confident in just reading aloud in front of their classmates, for crying out loud. Simple stuff like that we know as educators snowball into them being prepared for what comes next. So I'm curious if you want to take the wheel now and walk us through what it is that you guys have prepared to share with the crowd.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Eric. Yeah, I'll go ahead. Do you mind putting those up there? So I'll just briefly walk you through, we've been talking about some of the developments, the call for the science of reading, some of the latest developments, and I'll just walk you through what Reading Horizons can offer you and your students. And I think talking to Eric's point here is what the educators need, how to bring these foundational skills, as he was mentioning, that snowball effect. We're gonna create that foundation. We're gonna give those students the foundation that they need to create that snowball effect so that they can become effective readers and then flourish academically and then professionally beyond that. But we're going to be providing those basic skills for those students in a very clean and systematic way that makes sense, is easy on the executive functioning of the brain, and that at the heart of it is always developing that automaticity to help our students become proficient readers. And so that's kind of in a nutshell who we are. So let's just dive into it a little bit here. As we mentioned here, we've been around since 1984. We are a supplemental phonics program. So in the K3 setting, we can be used tier 1, but we will be supplemental. We can be used tier 1 across all the way to tier 2 and tier 3, or we can be used simply in intervention in tier 2 and tier 3, depending on your needs. As you can see here, we have a blended learning approach, and then we can be used for English language learners and special education students as well. So we can cater to a variety of students, a variety of needs, and we can tweak the curriculum and magnify and focus on certain points to really get at the needs of each individual student here. We'll talk about 2 programs. Primarily, we'll talk about Reading Horizons Discovery. That's going to be our K3 curriculum. We do have a program for older students, grades 4 and above, providing them that foundational reading, but it's in a more mature and engaging and motivating manner there. So just being aware that Elevate does exist, but we'll focus primarily here on the Discovery, and then at a later time during this conference, we'll talk about that Reading Horizons Elevate there. So just to dive into it, to give you a brief overview of who we are, what we do, I'll talk about our method here. Within our method, we have 5 lesson types. You can see here our primary lesson type is going to be decoding lessons. We also offer most common word instruction. We offer optional reference lessons, so grammar, part of speech, things like that. We have a spelling supplement that coincides with our decoding lessons, and we've just released a new phonemic awareness piece called Sound City that brings in phonemic awareness with phonics and decoding all in one curriculum there. Our curriculum has 6 chapters, and let's just walk through the beginning here. The first 4 chapters will make the most sense, and if you want to carry on the conversation later, we can get into chapters 5 and 6. That's where you kind of get into more of the detailed and nuanced discussions. I love that stuff, but for the sake of today, we'll just keep it simple here and talk about the first 4 chapters. So chapter 1, alphabetic principle. Okay, nothing earth-shattering here. 4 things: name, sound, uppercase, lowercase formation. We teach short vowels before we teach long vowels. So in this chapter, it's the alphabetic principle. And within chapter 1, the whole purpose here is we're going to be creating basic CVC words. So we go from the name and the sound, and we create what's called a slide. Put a consonant and a vowel together. In this case, it's ba. Put an arrow underneath that. Transition from that slide to the word. Put an X under our vowel, ba to bag. Now, at this point, we're not necessarily going to be dictating sentences, but we will be embedding these words in sentences. We'll be using them in sentences because we know the students need decoding and they need language, and we're going to be developing that. And so that's the whole purpose here in chapter 1. Now, if you have a student, you think, hey, this student doesn't need this, that's great. What we recommend is you expedite chapter 1. We always assess, never assume. Morton Gillingham says as quickly as you can and as slowly as you must. We go in an expedited manner, we go through chapter 1. But we want to make sure that there aren't any holes or gaps before we assume that knowledge and before we move on. So that's chapter 1. Chapter 2 is talking about additional foundational patterns here. So we have consonant blends and high frequency digraphs. So taking those basic CVC words and making CCVC words, and even adding consonants there, consonant clusters at the end of words. And that's the whole focus there in chapter 2. Chapter 3, we take that foundation that we've had, we take it to the next level where we then start decoding single syllable words. And this is where we introduce long vowels. At this point, we've only been talking about the short vowels. We introduce the long vowels. We go from simply marking a word to then proving, why is this word pronounced the way that it is? And within this, this format here, we teach 5 phonetic skills. And the whole purpose of these phonetic skills is to determine if a vowel is long or if it's short within a single syllable word. And we teach the students these markings. We start left to right and we come, so left to right, we come underneath the word and then we come up and around. So in summary, the 5 skills are as follows. The first one is referred to sometimes as a closed syllable. If a vowel is followed by one consonant, that vowel will be short. So in this case, the sound eh, the word met because of the one consonant. The second syllable, the second phonetic skill is also a closed syllable type. So if a vowel is followed by two consonants, the vowel will be short. In this case, the sound the word jump. Well, why? Because of two consonants following the vowel. The third one is referred to as the open syllable. If a vowel here stands alone, there's no consonant, it will be long. In this case, the word's me. The fourth rule is the silent E rule, silent E making the previous vowel long, create the word bike. And the fifth and final phonetic skill is that when you've got vowel teams, for certain vowel teams, the second vowel will be silent. That first one will be long. In this case, the word is boat. So that's the bulk of chapter 3. Now, chapter 4 is where we take this to the next level. We transition from single syllable, mo, mot, moat, and then we transition into motel. And that's what we're getting at is multi-syllabic word decoding in chapter 4. This is where we want to get our students here. And so we teach two decoding skills in chapter 4. The first one is that one must run. Now, what does this mean? If you notice here, I have my O and my E are my two vowels. Well, in between, how many consonants do I have? I have one. That means that one consonant will run forward, and that helps the students know where they can divide the syllable. So here they divide it, and then they already know how to decode single syllables at this point. So here's an open syllable, we've got mo. Here's a closed syllable, we have tell. We put that together, we have the word motel. The second skill states that two will split, meaning if there are two consonants between my vowels, they will separate or they will split. So I divide between that B and the J, and then once again, I've got a consonant here making this a closed syllable, so sub. Two consonants making this a closed syllable, making this syllable say jet. Put that together, I have the word subject. And the beautiful thing here is a student can then take a word of any length, for example, the word contemplate. They will know what to mark. They will know where to divide the word. They will know how to decode each syllable, and then they will know how to put that together for the entire word. And that's what we're aiming at, is getting our students to this point. Now, we know this doesn't cover everything in the English language. We cover additional patterns in the subsequent chapters. In chapters 5 and 6, we cover other chapters, other skills, but we want to get our students as quickly to this point as possible so they can start decoding multisyllabic words, and then we start adding on kind of the exceptions or other less frequently occurring patterns in the language. So that
Ethan,
is our curriculum.
Well, as a former high school English teacher who would often encounter missed, either, I don't want to say only learning disabilities, but just missed skills, right? I adore the formulaic approach to learning what I think is the most difficult language to teach, with all of our inconsistencies in the way that English has arrived, correct? And the thing that it leads me to is putting myself in the shoes of a student and wondering what that's like to recognize, to mark, to decode on the platform itself from their role in the platform. Is it intended for them to be doing, for young learners to be doing this decoding and phonemic work, pencil and paper, or is it now a completely digitized user experience for those younger students?
So it can be both. For our younger students, our K3 in particular, we recommend the direct instruction approach with an optional software as a supplement. But you can have a blended learning approach. But we always still like to champion that in the classroom, direct instruction when possible, especially there at the K3 level. But we realize that's not always feasible, with the pandemic and other things like that. So we do make that optional software available to the students so they can do exclusively one or the other, or they can blend them together.
Cool.
And yeah, if you don't mind, I can show you a little bit kind of what this looks like. You might be wondering, what does this look like in the classroom? Well, our lessons are divided into 4 parts. So you have a review, you have a direct instruction, you have a guided practice, which we do a dictation practice, and then there's a transfer piece. And I think we just hit on this here. For the direct instruction, it can be whole class. If you're in tier 1, it can be in a small group. It can be one-on-one in tier 3, and then it can be combined with or separate from the software, depending on your needs. But you provide that direct instruction through whatever medium, whatever mode is most suitable in your setting. But this is where I think is the most important part here. This is where we start to get into the guided practice. So you're wondering, is it paper, pencil? For us, it's going to be a whiteboard, a marker, and an eraser. And the teacher's going to get up in front of the class. The students will be standing at a whiteboard or holding their own whiteboard, and the teacher will dictate a word. So say the word 2 times. The students will hear it 2 times. They will repeat it back 2 times. They will write it on their board. They will mark all the necessary markings. They will hear it being used in a sentence, and then they will read it 2 times. And the teacher gives anywhere from 3 to a dozen of those words, really honing in. How's the student performing? Where do I need to give feedback? What's my next lesson going to look like? That is the key. This is the crux of one of our lessons here, this guided practice. So this is why we recommend the in-person, so the teacher can be there. The software will give a version of this, and the software will give great feedback as well. And then the capstone for us is the transfer piece. We want to get to automaticity. And this is where we've got transfer cards where you can practice word and sentence level fluency. And then we have decodable readers where you can then extend that to the passage level and have comprehension built in. And if you need extra activities for center, or if you want to push this to tier 2 or tier 3, we have tables at the end of each one of our lessons that differentiates and intensifies the instruction depending on the needs that you see for your students. And so that's what we do there in a nutshell, that core 4 with a scripted lesson to provide that scaffolding for the teacher, so the teacher can focus on who they're teaching and not be so caught up in how do I going to remember all of these rules. It's right there scaffolded for the teacher.
That is great, Ethan. And the couple times that you cited Orton Gillingham, what I love about what you just demonstrated is that it's right in line with John Hattie's Making Learning Visible as well. And particularly as a former classroom teacher, what I like about that is that the learning is made visible as an English teacher, no different than it would be for a math teacher. And I can see that, and I can assess immediately and intervene. I can spiral. I could offer another example to that particular student who might be struggling with a particular combination, which leads me to wondering what else is available for the teacher to disaggregate data in student achievement and take a look at what they could do to help students grow as long as they have time to do so.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we offer a variety of assessment tools or data gathering instruments. So with our software, you can have access to a diagnostic. It will give a diagnostic on their reading level, on their word recognition, and really pinpoint, where help might be needed. And as they go throughout the curriculum on the software, it will let you know how they're performing. You can do progress monitoring. We have checkups at the end of each lesson. So those are our formal assessments. So you've got your diagnostic, you have your checkups after each lesson if you want to. We have mid-chapter assessments and end-of-chapter assessments to really formally assess them, both on the software, and you can also do it paper pencil, depending on your needs. But we also build in informal assessment because we know we need that summative and that formative assessment. And so as you're doing dictation, we have a little grid that you can go through and you can mark how students are performing on a dictation, what words or what areas they might be struggling in. If you're going to be using a decodable reader for your students, and these transfer cards, you can take note of how they're performing with their fluency. Hey, this student might need help on whatever skill this might be, or this passage was challenging, this part of the passage. So you can gather that data, and then you want to triangulate that data, that informal data, with the formal assessments that we're giving for our students. And so yeah, we have that for both digitally and also paper pencil, depending on your needs.
Well, I like both the expediency and the ability to just stand at the closest available whiteboard and develop skills quickly, as well as the chance to bring back that data to your PLC and share patterns that are observed in one classroom that weren't observable to the teacher while they were giving a lesson. And hopefully together they come up with interventions and even recognize within the teaching staff who's the best at using Reading Horizons solutions to facilitate certain outcomes, right? I know we're short on time, but I want to make sure that I leave enough here for both of you to share what you're hearing from other educators in terms of particularly if they've been using the products longitudinally. And I know we're just scratching the surface here, and we'll do more in a week on our next session ahead of the actual event on the 14th and 15th. But before we close things out, what is it that you're hearing that's the most encouraging, the most translatable from the field as they've used Reading Horizons' many solutions over time?
I'll take over this one, Ethan, then you could just add on. As far as what Ethan went over, schools can use our program for tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 students. So that's the nice thing about our program. They could use it as a whole class, or you could basically break it up into individuals and basic groups as well. A lot of schools in Indiana, what we're hearing, they really like the program, the special education department, and also EL department and intervention. So they're really seen as being a huge advocate, a huge asset for those students. And they see immediate results within the first 6 months, 2 to 4 grades jump utilizing our program.
That's great. Ethan?
Yeah, I would say something that's encouraging. If you don't mind, I'm going to jump ahead here to kind of this slide that I wanted to show you here. Is we have been formally gathering data. In the past, we've gathered data, but now we're really focusing on this on our research department. Is we're seeing great gains all across the level, across grades, and that's really encouraging because there's been a great learning loss throughout COVID. There's been kind of a great stress or burden placed on educators. And when I'm out in the field training, or when I'm coaching, or when I'm consulting, oftentimes I hear, if the implementation is going well, that this program is simple for me as an educator. It's not cumbersome. It's just not another program. It's very simple. But I think the most important thing is, because it's so simple and easy for educators to grasp and apply, we're seeing great results in the classroom. We're seeing students flourish despite the circumstances, and despite national trends. We're seeing students be resilient, and we're seeing great gains with reading scores, with word recognition ability. And so that's my passion. That's really fun to see its efficacy throughout the classroom, and teachers responding so positively to it.
I think that's everything. As you're well aware, the one discipline that makes all others possible is the ability to read and write. And so I've often wondered, what could one do to bolster literacy skills, regardless of age, but particularly young, when minds are more malleable, given the fact that we have had such setbacks recently, and it's absolutely urgent to make these sorts of changes. And I'm super glad to know about Reading Horizons, particularly for the younger learners, as we can all be patient to watch them grow and strive to be, thoughtful and considerate and intelligent young adults that know how to back up their claims and know how to think logically in a manner that helps them succeed with whatever comes next themselves. So super encouraging. You may have seen a big smile on my face when I noticed the Lexile gain differential there from those that had implemented Reading Horizons into their literacy work with their students. So very encouraging. You guys are definitely in the right place, and I'm excited and just wish you all the best of luck as you continue to share what you're doing with other Indiana educators. Any final words for the good of the cause?
I would just have to say we're going to be doing another presentation next week on Monday. So we're going to be covering for the older students, and we're looking forward to seeing you guys in the conference. We're going to be giving out some prizes as well. Thank you again for your time, Eric. Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for participating. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you.
We'll see you here next time, this time next week. See you guys. Bye-bye.